You're watching World Insight. Still to come on our program, China's film industry bouncing back. What helped breathe new life into cinema? Up for discussion next. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Now let's have a look at how the Chinese film industry breathed back to life. There are quite many movies screening during the National Day holiday in China, including blockbusters such as Leap, People My Homeland, Vanguard, and the highly anticipated animated movie Legend of Deification. At the film studios in Hengdian and Qingdao, hundreds of film crews are back to work, and everything was as busy as before the pandemic. But without a doubt, the pandemic has brought inevitable changes to the industry. Streaming platforms have risen as fierce competitors to traditional cinemas, especially during the outbreak when many movies decided to cancel theater releases and debut online instead. So what are the long-term prospects of film industry, both financially and creatively? Has the viewers' habits irreversibly changed to a new normal? We're going to ask that question to our panels. For more on Chinese films during the National Day holiday, in New York, Joanna Cheng, intercultural film critic and filmmaker. In Beijing, Teng Jimeng, a freelance cultural commentator, professor of American culture in China. And also in Beijing, Han Hua, media and communication consultant. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our program. First of all, isn't that amazing that 800, the movie, has already earned a box office of $3 billion, becoming the biggest global movie in the world for this year so far, Professor Tang?
Yes, absolutely. And mainstream movies with this very patriotism as its theme has always worked wonders in this country and have been appealing to the audiences nationwide.
One could argue this is a new phenomenon, but if you look at the numbers, Joanna, of last year, 2019, and there's a movie called My People, My Country. It has an opening weekend box office of 101 million. That's also very impressive. So how do you see the general trend in a way that movies with patriotic themes tend to be earning a lot of attention in the market right now in China?
The patriotic theme has been a theme traditionally in Chinese cinematic history, but in today's political environment, it becomes particularly important. So all the people in China can unite as one to confront all difficulties that's probably ahead of them. So I think movie is playing a very critical role at this particular juncture in history, particularly in the relationship between China and the rest of the world.
Ms. Han, how do you see this interesting phenomenon?
There are two numbers to give you a brief picture after the pandemic. We don't know when it ends. But in the past, the Spring Festival office usually accounts for about 15% of the total revenue of the year. But this year, the COVID-19 outbreak right before the Chinese Spring Festival made this 15% of revenue into zero, which is estimated at $1 billion USD this year. Another figure is the closing of about 20% of cinema in China as of July this year. So I think the movie performance, the box office performance of this 800 is also unprecedented given in this context.
It is, but when you see the box office is coming back somewhat, particularly nicely during the National Day holiday, this is certainly a very interesting theme which you have just talked about, the patriotic theme of the movie, because there's another box office called Leap, or The Leap, which is talking about the Chinese women's volleyball team, which has always been a national hero starting from the 1980s. You could argue that it has been inspiration for generations of young Chinese during China's reform and opening up. Professor Tang, I'm sure you were impressed by their stories throughout the years, and this time finally a movie. And interestingly, once again, a patriotic theme.
It's not just because it contains this very patriotic theme, but also it contains this very kind of fighting spirit. Lots of people were talking about the women's volleyball team as a national icon, representing this very national spirit, the spirit of being industrious, the spirit of being diligent, hardworking, and perhaps fighting this uphill battle when things are not in your favor. And so in this case, the women's volleyball teams kind of being put up on the big screen represents this very coming back of the so-called 女排精神, the spirit of the volleyball team. And so I think it's natural that we have quite a variety of films now being screened in movie theaters, and sports film. I consider it some kind of entertaining sports film now coming back to the big screen and try to kind of make an imprint on this very cinema market.
If you think about it, Joanna, that the moviegoers in China, of course, tend to be the younger generation, and the fact that patriotic themed movies echo extremely well with this market and with this generation. It's an absolute interesting phenomenon, one could speak.
Well, I certainly think the movie you just mentioned, Leap, is a very timely one. It put women into the center stage, where we see the female volleyball players conquering their fears and conquering conquering all the difficulties that they surpassed over the 35 years, that their way going to the championship. But I really want to say, I did see the trailer. I was very impressed, actually shocked by the narration to open the trailer. It says, the American and the Japanese will not have a soft hand on us. So please get ready to strike. So I think it gives me a sense that this film is preparing for people for some kind of war, which I don't think it should happen, but it's likely. But I think it's just giving me a sense of like tension. So it is a very engaging film, I hope, but it really alerts me to feel and sense where we are geographically or geopolitically, where we are in this equilibrium of this world affair. Right. We are at a crossroad of humanity is at crossroads. Civilization is put on a test. The movie is just one symptom through which we can see the velocity of human progress.
It's an interesting point you just raised, Ms. Han.
I noticed the interesting change of the titles of this movie. First, from the Chinese volleyball team, women volleyball team, to striving for championship. I think it is very interesting to watch the movie in this context of the fight with pandemic, because China is certainly taking the lead during the fight with the pandemic. It is not calling itself a champion, but it certainly is. And also China is also leading the way in economic recovery post the COVID-19 outbreak, and also in the vaccine development as well. So the movie itself, or the media and entertainment industry as a whole in China, is booming again, or trying to resuming the responsibility as well as the economic energy to echo the calling from the generation, also from the context of this whole world situation.
Basically, sports. I mean, volleyball team has been volleyball match, and it has always been a very competitive sports item. Item in the past. And many would say sports has always been a peacetime war, and that's why you hear lots of battle cry, and that's kind of stuff to encourage the team members to be more engaging, and in a sense to encourage them to play the match in a very competitive fashion. And I mean, metaphorically, I think that we shall continue to live geopolitically in this current world, whether we have this very COVID-19 or perhaps some kind of conflicts of interest or trade wars. And so in this sense, this film must be seen in a historical context. I mean, one in the context back in the 1980s, which is also a very, very competitive age for the Chinese people, because it is the very opening decade of China's reform. All Chinese people are kind of competing and working hard in order to leave an imprint on the world arena. And secondly, I think it must be put in the context in terms of this very COVID-19, as Ms. Han has referred to, as well as this very geopolitical strife and conflict. And so my argument is that, yes, there could be a political reading of this film, but let's not, interpret the film purely from a kind of a geopolitical strife and that very context.
Okay. Well, another question I do have in mind is, as some of you have already beautifully illustrated about the impact of the pandemic on the film industry, not just in China, but also everywhere in the world. Joanna, I want to go to you about that. There were earlier reports from PricewaterhouseCoopers suggesting how much the market of China and the market of the United States, for example, will be listed as the most attractive movie markets in the world. We have seen some numbers suggesting that by the year 2024, something like that, the U.S. box office is likely to lead to 10 billion. That's going to be an industry as much as that. While that of China, according to the report, will be about 8.1 billion. In fact, contradictory to some of the earlier predictions of the Chinese market, might be exceeding that of the United States even this year. So we do not know, whether these numbers are reliable numbers, but certainly they could be off reference. The question is more about what does it mean when a market is becoming the largest and the second largest in the world? How much will it have an impact on the taste of the industry, on the rhetorics of the industry, on the storytelling of the industry, and on the development of different sectors of this industry? I think this is a very interesting and relevant question right now. Ms. Chang.
The competition between the United States and China in terms of movie market has just become very intense. It has been forecasted by many industry experts that China will become the world's #1 film market by 2020. But this pandemic just happened. It put the United States at its back seat. And I think China is probably going to thrive in this pandemic. And I think it's probably going to prove this prophecy, is probably going to be doing good. So it's very symptomatic of this competition between these two markets. It's actually the competition between these two world powers. Here we are at the, again, at the crossroad of history. We're seeing from the movie industry, this two world power is wrestling with each other.
Professor Tang, you could almost tell from the illustration of Ms. Chang about the mentalities from the other side of the world toward China. How do you see the growth of the film market this year, and how will film industry globally and also in different markets adjust to that?
Well, once again, I think the Chinese cinema market has been very seriously battered by COVID-19, but then the rebound is also very, very impressive. The rebound actually finds its most expression in the in the work right now being kind of reinitiated. For example, according to this very statistic, almost like 100 crews are actually now being now starting to work in cinema locations all across the country. And so in this sense, I think that the rebound is very robust and it's going to lead the world cinema market. And thematically wise, I think the world is also looking up to China in terms of presenting the most interesting, the most appealing themes. And for example, even Disney are also are kind of appealing to the Chinese cinema market and trying to sell the China-themed movies, and also co-production film like Frozen. Frozen has always been Disney's kind of iconic images and film productions. Now it also now enters into this very co-production track. And so I think that this rebound is not just leading Chinese film market, but also the world cinema market in terms of production, in terms of film investment, and also film distribution in the world right now. And so I would say that the film market right now, which is rebounding and will continue to, in a sense, prospering into the next 2 or 3 years. Think about the screen numbers right now. China actually has 70,000 screens, which tops the U.S., which exceeds that of the U.S. and tops being #1 in the world.
Ms. Han, you used to work for international, multinational media company, and I know you work on many film projects as well. Some successful, some not necessarily so at that time, given the circumstances. So what do you make of the evolvement of the environment for cooperation and also the possibilities for China-foreign cooperation right now, whether it's about the capital, whether it's about the market, whether it's about the story, the staff, the filming venues, you name it?
I would like to see the cooperation down the road can be very comprehensive, not only in capital investment, but also in the production. From the whole value chain need to be worked together. So I would like to describe this kind of competition as well as the cooperation as competition in the film industry, in particular in the context of when the U.S.-China relations are suffering from the free fall. The only silver lining, in my opinion, would be in this media and entertainment industry if there is cooperation between the #1 market and the #2 market. But I'm not that optimistic as Professor Teng just described, because to be frank with you, I'm not optimistic because the movie theater business model is too simple and not innovative enough and already took a hit before the coronavirus pandemic. So many movie theaters were working very hard now in coming up with some new models, collaborating with real estate developers, not only in China, but also in the U.S., to add functions, membership or loyalty programs, etc. But let me ask you this question. What was your last time to a movie theater? Maybe because of 800 you went there, but you cannot. So the conclusion is that you cannot live without content, but you can certainly live without a movie theater. So having said this, I'm optimistic with other business models in the cooperation between the two markets. For example, the online advertising, the online subscription model, or the film industry player to work harder to interact with consumers from the both markets during the whole production process to generate income from day one, such as fans investments to merchandise sales, where we can learn a lot from U.S. markets. They do a lot of successful stories in this merchandising sales as well.
Thank you so much for the three of you for being with us. Han Hua, Teng Jimeng, Joanna Cheng. Really appreciate it. All the best. Thank you. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to search World Insight, the name of the program, or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.